There are places on this earth that maps refuse to forget, even after the world has tried to erase them. Places where fishermen still lower their voices. Where old sailors trace a line on a chart and simply say, "Do not go there after dark." This is the story of one such place. A city. A harbor. Thousands of lives, homes, streets, bell towers, and market squares. And then, one morning, a fog rolled in from the sea. It did not lift for 3 days. When it finally cleared, the city was gone. Not destroyed. Not burned. Not sunk beneath the waves. Gone, as if it had simply stepped sideways out of the world. This is the mystery of the island they came to call the Island of No Return. To understand what was lost, we must first understand what was built. Long before it vanished, this island was known as a jewel of the trade routes, a crossroads where merchant ships from a dozen nations dropped anchor to exchange silk, spice, salt, and stories. Its harbor was said to be the finest natural port for hundreds of miles, sheltered by cliffs on 3 sides and open to the sea on the 4th, as though the land itself had been shaped to welcome travelers home. Contemporary accounts describe a city of stone and timber, its streets rising in terraces up the hillside, crowned by a cathedral whose bell could be heard from ships still a day's sail from shore. Records kept by port officials speak of a thriving population, craftsmen, fishermen, traders, and a ruling council that governed with a mixture of maritime law and old island custom. For nearly 2 centuries, the city prospered. Its wealth came not just from trade, but from something rarer, knowledge. Sailors who passed through spoke of scholars on the island who studied the tides, the winds, and, most curiously, the fog itself. This corner of the sea was notorious for sudden, dense mists that could swallow a ship whole within minutes, only to dissolve just as quickly, leaving clear skies behind. The islanders did not fear this fog. They lived with it. They built their lighthouses tall, their harbor bells loud, and their sailors learned to navigate blind, guided by sound rather than sight. In a strange way, the fog was part of what made the city thrive. It kept enemies at bay, discouraged pirates, and gave the island an air of mystery that only added to its reputation. But mystery, as history so often shows us, can turn from an asset into an omen. According to the surviving records, ship manifests, harbor logs, and a handful of letters that survived in mainland archives, the final days before the disappearance were, by every account, entirely unremarkable. Trade continued as usual. A merchant vessel had arrived 2 days earlier, its captain later recalling nothing unusual about the harbor, the people, or the weather. Fishermen went out at dawn as they always did. Bells rang for morning prayer. Market stalls opened, children ran through the terraced streets, and smoke rose from 100 chimneys into a clear autumn sky. Then, in the early afternoon, the wind shifted. Sailors aboard ships anchored offshore reported a strange stillness settling over the water, an unnatural quiet, as though the sea itself were holding its breath. And then, from the horizon, the fog came. Witnesses aboard those ships, the only witnesses whose accounts survive, described it not as a normal sea mist, but as something thicker, colder, and faster than anything they had known. Within minutes, visibility dropped to almost nothing. The harbor bells, usually so reliable, went silent far sooner than expected. Some sailors claimed they heard voices carried strangely across the water, fragments of shouting, then nothing at all. By nightfall, no ship dared approach the island. The captains anchored offshore, waiting for the fog to lift, as it always had before. It did not lift the next day. Nor the day after that. For 3 full days, the island of the vanishing city sat wrapped in a fog so complete that not a single ship could find its harbor, let alone its shore. On the morning of the 4th day, the fog broke as suddenly as it had come. The ships that finally dared approach found the island itself still standing, the cliffs, the coastline, the shape of the land unchanged. But the city was not there. Where terraced streets had climbed the hillside, there was now open, undisturbed grass. Where the cathedral had stood, its bell audible for a day's sail in every direction, there was nothing but bare stone and wind. No ruins. No wreckage. No bodies. No signs of fire, flood, or battle. It was as though the city that had stood there for 200 years had simply never existed at all. Search parties combed the island for weeks. They found old foundations half buried in earth that looked, by every appearance, centuries older than they should have been, as if time itself had raced forward across the landscape while the ships waited offshore. Wells that had supplied fresh water to thousands of residents were dry and clogged with roots that should have taken decades to grow. Nothing about the scene made sense within the timeline the sailors had witnessed with their own eyes. 3 days of fog. 200 years of erosion, in appearance if not in fact. The Council of the mainland kingdom that had once counted this island among its territories launched a formal inquiry. Statements were taken from every captain, every sailor, every merchant who had been anchored offshore during those 3 days. Their accounts, preserved in archives that still exist today, are strikingly consistent, and strikingly short on explanation. No survivors were ever found. No bodies were ever recovered. No wreckage of any kind, save the strange, aged foundations, was ever identified as belonging to the vanished city. In the centuries since, scholars, sailors, and storytellers alike have tried to explain what happened on that island, and none of their explanations have ever satisfied everyone. The most straightforward theory points to catastrophe, a landslide, an earthquake, or a tidal wave that swept the city into the sea in the space of those 3 fog-bound days, leaving no visible ruins because the sea itself had claimed them. Some geological surveys of the region do show evidence of ancient seismic activity, and it is entirely possible that the island's cliffs once extended farther than they do today. Yet this theory struggles to explain the eyewitness accounts of voices in the fog, the unnaturally aged foundations, or the complete absence of any wreckage along the shoreline or seabed. A second theory suggests plague or mass evacuation, that the fog provided cover for a city already dying of disease, its remaining residents fleeing under the cover of mist rather than face the horror of a slow death, with the physical structures later dismantled or reclaimed by nature far faster than should have been possible. Supporters point to trade records showing a curious drop in the island's shipments in the months prior, which some interpret as early signs of hardship. Critics note that no mass grave, no abandoned fleet, and no refugee accounts ever surfaced to support such a large-scale exodus. A third and more folkloric theory has persisted longest among the descendants of the sailors who witnessed the fog, that the island did not lose its city to disaster or disease, but to time. No abandoned fleet, and no refugee accounts ever surfaced to support such a large-scale exodus. A third and more folkloric theory has persisted longest among the descendants of the sailors who witnessed the fog, that the island did not lose its city to disaster or disease, but to time itself, that whatever moved through that fog somehow folded decades, even centuries, into those 3 days, aging the land far beyond what should have been possible while the people themselves were carried somewhere beyond memory or record. This theory, of course, sits outside the boundaries of conventional history, but it endures precisely because no conventional explanation has ever fully accounted for what the ship's logs describe. What remains undisputed, across every theory and every generation of historians who have studied the case, is this: the ship's logs are real. The inquiry records are real. The strange, aged foundations documented by search parties are real, and preserved sketches of them still exist in mainland archives today. Something happened on that island. The disagreement is only ever about what. The island still exists. It appears on modern charts, though many maps mark it only by its old, wary nickname, the one sailors gave it in the years after the disappearance, the Island of No Return. For generations afterward, ships avoided its waters when fog was forecast, and even now, local fishing communities nearby maintain old customs passed down through families, a bell rung before entering certain waters, a reluctance to anchor near the island after dusk. Whether these customs stem from genuine caution or simply from stories told too many times to ever fully disbelieve, no one can say for certain. Occasional expeditions have visited the island in the centuries since, drawn by historians, treasure hunters, and the simply curious. They find what the original search parties found: empty ground, old foundations, and silence. No definitive answer has ever emerged. No document, no excavation, no scientific survey has closed the case. And so the fog remains the last witness, the only one who truly knows what happened during those 3 days when a city of thousands disappeared from the face of the earth, leaving behind nothing but stone, grass, and a name that still makes sailors lower their voices. Perhaps one day, science will explain it. A landslide long buried. A plague long forgotten. A trick of memory, exaggerated over centuries of retelling until legend and fact became impossible to separate. Or perhaps some mysteries are meant to remain exactly that, mysteries. Reminders that for all our maps, our records, and our certainty about the world, there are still places where the fog rolls in, and something is lost that we will never fully understand. The island of no return still waits in the sea, exactly where it has always been. The city it once held does not. And somewhere, in the space between those two facts, lies a mystery that history has never been able to fully lay to rest.